Запросити до слова ще одного нашого гостя з Польщі, з Варшавського університету, Микола Павляк, асистент-професор соціології, і тема його доповіді «Institutional theories in explaining societal transformations in Poland».
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Professor Kutujev, for inviting us to this interesting conference and giving us an opportunity to talk what we are researching recently and what is, like, at least for me, deeply engaging topic. So my task is quite ambitious. I have 27 minutes to tell you about 27 years of Polish societal transformation since communism. So I will try to be brief, but it's also going to cause some problems of simplification. Yeah. So the structure of the presentation is, maybe I will start with telling you a bit about the new institutional framework which is going to help me in understanding the transformation and its later phase, as I think there is a good reason to call it Europeanization of Poland. Then I will ask a question how to call the next period, which I believe we are entering now. Then I will tell you what the pitfalls or mistakes, maybe even mistakes, were made by my, let's say, elder colleagues researching Polish transformation. And then I will show you some postulates or the ideas how to create a new synthesis of knowledge about transformation in Poland, which I hope is going to be useful for researching other countries in our region. Okay, so I think we had quite interesting impressions about how to use a concept of institution in great presentation by Wojciech Rafałowski. So I'm just briefly telling you about the theoretical assumptions behind researching the social change as an institutional change. And so first thing, going back to the classical authors like Thorsten Weber, is thinking that people are not calculators of pleasure and pain. They are not simply hedonistic creatures. Yes, and we often use, as Commons said in 29, imperfect and pragmatic solutions to reconcile our past conflicts as guidance to deal with our present conflicts. Yes, and these imperfect and pragmatic solutions to past conflicts are institutions, how he called. Yeah, so history matters if we study the present state of our society. Douglas North, the professor of economy, or actually history of economy, who received the Nobel Prize in economics, defined institutions as humanly devised constraints that structure political, economic, and social interaction. And he was always highlighting that they contain the informal element and formal element. And so the history of the institutional paradigm in social sciences is a history of discussion with neoclassical economics, in fact. Yes? Not perceiving persons as being rational, not perceiving people as maximizing their profits, trying to avoid using simplified assumptions about who the social actor is. Yes? And always taking into account the past. So seeing things and occurrences in diachronic perspective. Of course, the new institutional approach is very wide and is applied in many social sciences and it has its internal quarrels, but let's not get into these details because we don't want to get sectarian about it, but we have to remember that there are at least three branches: historical one, sociological one, and rational choice one. Yeah, and the very important inspiration is the social constructivism of Berger and Lachmann. So we always have to remember that social institutions are, yes, as Douglas North said, designed by humans. They are social constructions. They are not given by God, or they are not having the natural they are not natural things, yes. Although sometimes we believe that they are natural or given by God, if they are objectified to such an extent. We can look at institutions from and take into account their regulative aspects, their normative aspects, but they're also shaping our cognition. Yes, if we do not have institutionalized the division of genders, we will not perceive that there are women and men. Yes, this is not only institutions are not only guiding our actions, but actually they are putting some pressure and creating us as actors. And very important assumption taken from the organizational studies of the new institutional studies of organizations, the idea that actors are not looking for profits only, but they're looking for legitimacy. Yes, so adaptation, conforming to the institutional context is the most important driver for an action. So we have this strong tension of thinking why the actor is acting. What is determining this action? And we have to think about the agency paradox. How it is possible that actor is acting, although he is designing also the institutions which are then influencing his actions. One of the crucial problems of social sciences. Yes, so how it is possible that we, humankind, designed institutions, and then we believe that they are given by God and they have natural origins. Okay, but come back to Poland and let's start talking about our splendid transformation. Yes. So the institutional approach was one of the most important theoretical perspectives to understand what was going on after 1989, when we had the first elections, which were not democratic elections, but there were some elements of democratic procedure in it, and the Polish society simply said no to the Communist Party. And as a consequence of these elections, there was a possibility to form a government, a cabinet by Tadeusz Mazowiecki, who was first not communist politician leading a cabinet in Poland, and then the rapid reforms started, neoliberal reforms, at least at the field of economy. First, this way of thinking about the social change, the institutional one, helped to refute quite quickly the transitionalist paradigm, at least to study Central Eastern Europe. Yes? Transitionalist paradigm was applied in study of Southern America and to thinking how this autocratic or dictators of Southern America were changing to democracies. Yeah? But the problem with the transitionalist paradigm is that it's teleological. Yes, the democracy is a goal of a change. And what we know from the institutional studies of social transformation is that actually there is no goal. Yeah, of course, certain social actors have in mind their goals and the ideas how the society should look like after the change, but the change is an outcome of interactions of these actors of different power. Yes, you have the influential politicians with, for example, strict neoliberal ideas how the economy should like, but you still have powerful workers' movements, yes, or you have still powerful business circles connected to the former communist elites who are having different goals, and the actual social transformation is an outcome, emergent outcome of this games of actors. Yeah? So I think one important thing we have also to remember is that Polish sociology had the luck to be alive during the communist times, and we had quite good institutional analysis of the Polish communist system. So it was good ground for doing the institutional analysis of the change from the communist system. Yeah, and Polish sociologists, not only sociologists, other social scientists were evidencing and documenting the interactions of social actors who were embedded in various domains. They were trying, some of them were in power to design new institutions. Some didn't, some of them lacked their power, they were just adapting to these institutions, but some of them were also trying to anticipate what is going to be the shape of the new institutions and then changing their actions in order to fit to the new institutions, which also had some consequences in the shape of the institutions. Very interesting paradoxes for people interested in studying unintended consequences of social action. Yeah? So, thanks to this approach to study the social change, we now knew that the social process of transformation was not leading to designed goals, but it was an emergent outcome of actions. It created a lot of paradoxes in our region. Yes, very interesting review of institutional literature about Central Eastern Europe and post-Soviet zone done by Ivan Seleny, Hungarian sociologist, and Katarzyna Wilk, Polish sociologist together. They showed that the countries which quite quickly adopted neoliberal economic systems, they for a very long time sustained paternalistic distributive systems. And so, of course, I know the best example of Poland, although the rapid, even shocking economic reforms started January 1999, but for a very long time we were keeping paternalistic higher education, pension system, and healthcare. Yes, and this incoherence in different social spheres, well, at least according to Seleny and Wilk, couldn't come out in different way because the rapid change in economic sphere had to be somehow paid back by not changing so rapidly the distributive systems. And so this is, I like very much this example that, for example, among the elements we have written in our constitution, the fact that the higher education is free of charge in Poland is the one the most supported. I think 85% of Polish population support the idea that the higher education in our country has to be free of charge. But as a consequence of having higher education free of charge and not having strong enough state to collect very large amounts of money in taxes, this higher education is not that good as we would like to have it, yes? Because we are not able to pay as much money for research programs and also for teaching. Yeah? We are also always complaining about our healthcare system, but we should be actually happy that we didn't reform it in a neoliberal way, that it's still supported by state and it is a distributive system. It's not a free market system. Yeah, so we see that there are these paradoxes. And on the other hand, as Seleny and Wilk were pointing to, in many post-Soviet countries which were members of the Soviet Union, although this economic system remained or was transformed into some kind of patrimonial system with powerful oligarchs, many distributive systems got very neoliberal. Yes? And the citizens didn't have much support from the state in this sphere. And so there are these very interesting paradoxes, and if you have institutional framework in mind, you have to remember that institutions are not creating one coherent system of institutions. In many systems we have different institutions and there are tensions between these institutions which are quite often triggering the institutional change later on because we somehow would like to resolve these tensions. Okay. The next step in changes of my country was, let's call it the Europeanization period. Yes, there is also strong tradition of institutional studies of Europeanization, and there is, of course, quite large quarrel how to understand this process, this kind of a change or whatever Europeanization is. But it might be helpful to understand what the Europeanization is. So at least Olsen, who's, by the way, a Norwegian politologist, so he's outside of the European Union, said that at least to study what is Europeanization in context of the European Union, it's to study how the central institutions of European Union are penetrating the national and subnational systems of governance. Yes, how the European Union, its institutions like European Commission, European Parliament, Council of European Union, using their regulations are able to penetrate and change institutions of member states, but also of local level actors. But also, and I think it's very important in the context of Central Eastern Europe, Europeanization might be understood as exporting of forms of political organization and governance that are typical for Europe beyond the European territory. And I know it sounds a bit awkward because we know that we are on the European territory, but the Europeanness belonging to Europe, I think, east from the Germany is something which is always debated. It's not full European identity. It's always a goal of many changes. Yeah? So these two ways of thinking about Europeanizations are getting united in the context in which we think about Europeanization of Poland. So taking into account some concepts from the institutional theory. Yes, the policy transfer in European Union is a kind of an institutional isomorphism. So institutions of several member states are getting more similar, homogeneous, because, for example, when the Central Eastern European countries in 2004 and then later in 2007 were joining European Union, they have to adapt acquis communautaire. Yes, the common legislature, so they have to make their legal institutions similar. But also it is causing so-called mimetic isomorphism, the one which occurs in situations of uncertainty. How we do things, how we create our institutions, how we create our legal systems. We then turn to find the actors, social actors which are successful, or at least the ones we perceived as successful. Yes? And in context of Eastern European members of European Union like Poland, Hungary, Romania and so on, obviously the successful ones were located in Western Europe. And the European framework of perceiving what is a success was creating a pressure to copy their policies and copy their legislation or the ways of the social practices of many social actors. Yeah, but what's going to happen then? Yes, if this very simplistic periodization, at least in our country, transformation starting in 1989, Europeanization starting 2004 when we accessed the European Union, but actually conforming to the European institutions started before in so-called pre-accession system. What's going to be the next period of the social changes? Yes, I put the date 2015, but I'm not going to die for this date. Maybe 2016 with Brexit would be better, or maybe something even worse going to happen 2017. Hope not. Hope the new year is going not to be so unlucky. Yes, 2015 is here because of the refugee crisis, which decreased their European legitimacy in many Eastern European countries as a political actor not capable of solving common problems. And the year when in my country the party won the election, which was openly not anti-European, but expressing that it's not taking European Union as a model for solving every problem. Yeah? So let's say mildly that it was a success of Euroscepticism in my country. Yeah, so frankly, I don't know the answer. That's why I put question marks here. But obviously there is going to be some new way of institutional change. Maybe the actors, initiators of this change are going to have some more agency, but maybe it's going to be just illusionary agency. But I still believe that institutional theory is going to be a good framework to explain this change. Yes, so if we reach the moment of time, at least, in which we are now, let's say what were the problems if this institutional, now I was praising the institutional framework, now I will express some of my doubts to it, at least to the way how it was done in context of Poland. One pitfall I call the theory of everything. Yes, so Polish social scientists were trying to explain whole macro processes, how the whole society, how the whole Poland was changing, what was going on with every social class, with every city and so on. Yeah, so this grandiosity of explanation. And the problem of linking micro and macro in the theory. Yes? As, for example, already cited today, Giddens said sociology is very useful with explaining how the individual biography is changed thanks to the macro processes which are happening on the societal level. But there is something between, and the sociological explanations, what has happened to single individuals with name dropping, like, it was social transformation, communist collapse, and things like this, were not always persuasive. Yes, another problem is the obsession with the Polish uniqueness and the idea of creating the theory of Polish society, not taking into the account that many things happening to the Czech society, Ukrainian society, Hungarian society, Romanian society are very similar. So there is a need of more comparative studies. And the other two elements of this pitfall of the theory of everything are, I think there are troubles for sociology and social science everywhere in the world. Yes, that sometimes we are lacking sufficient empirical evidences for what we are trying to explain. Not always we have so complex indexes of some phenomena as Wojciech Rafałowski persuaded us. Sometimes sociologists and other social sciences are just great at rhetorics and dealing with just a few findings, a few indexes they are able to bring to build this theory of everything. So there is quite a lot of speculation and essayism in explaining to what was going on in certain social spheres. And I'm a bit afraid that I'm also committing this pitfall now. The second pitfall, I would call it post hoc fallacy. So committing a mistake, methodological mistake of explaining what's going on now with the past occurrences. Right? And if you're talking about the cause and consequence, of course there's always link between what was in past and what's now, but we also need a theory linking these two elements. And so I find in analysis of Polish transformation quite much of abuse of path dependency approach, which is legitimizing the explaining present with past. Yes, we're saying, oh, the institutions were designed like this in the communist time and they are still having effects. Yes, but it's not enough to say this. You have to find some empirical proof for it. And quite often, a good idea to find it is to make comparative studies. Yes. So past actually is not a simple explanation of present. Very much connected with it is a problem of mentalist approach. And I'm very critical about using, for example, mental arrangements or psychological arrangements of people living in our region as explanations to the macro processes. Frankly, I don't believe that the fact that there was a creature of Homo Sciaticus here and there is the reason for how the things were happening in our region. Yeah? We have to remember that institutions are not only what's inside of the heads of people, but it's also about interactions between them. Yeah, so why the alleged Homo Sovieticus in one institutional context is turning to Homo Ukrainicus, and why in other contexts he's turning to a great professional worker when he's on emigration, for example. You cannot explain social level reality with the psychological phenomena. This is what I think, and it was very much a problem for the even institutional explanation of social transformations in our region. Another thing, here I put it, I think maybe too mindly, that there was ideologized approach to the analysis of social organization of communist Poland. But sociology of Polish transformation was also a very strong ideological tool of legitimizing neoliberal reforms. Major Polish sociologists were very strongly supporting the changes. Some would say that unreflexively. I think it is too much, it's not true. But also using this mentalist approach. For example, they were blaming the losers of the social changes for being losers of these changes. Yeah? So, why you are not becoming active members of middle class if you were working in the cooperative farming, yes, or you were a miner in southwest Poland? Yes? Using this mentalist approach mixed with an ideology of the change, it is affecting the serious analysis of the change. But there is hope. Well, hope it's maybe too much, because this institutional analysis of transformation and Europeization of Poland brought us quite a lot of knowledge, but we have to be critical about this knowledge. And the solution I'm proposing is focusing on meso-level phenomena, namely organizational fields or social fields. Yes, social field was brought, the idea of social field was brought to sociological theory by Pierre Bourdieu, but here I'm mostly referring to the way it was defined and used in institutional analysis. Yes? So Flickstein and McAdam said that social field is a meso-level social order. Yes? And this is the most suitable research site for researching social processes, both micro-level ones, which are visible on this field level, and the macro-level ones. Dimaggio and Powell, more than 50 years ago, defined organizational field as those organizations that in aggregate constitute a recognized area of institutional life. Key suppliers, resource and product consumers, regulatory agencies. This is regulatory agencies. It's the intervention of state into nearly every social field in which people are present, and other organizations that produce similar services as products. So as W. Richard Scott put it, social field or organizational field is a collection of quite often diverse but interdependent organizations that participate in a common meaning system. Yes, because there is some issue bringing them together, they have to at least share some elements of meaning, even if they don't agree on something, even if they're in conflict. So this social field approach, organizational field approach, is a very good way of missing the of fulfilling the lack of link between micro and macro. Yes, let's put something which is relevant to our context, studying the social field of higher education. Yes, in this room we are either scientists, either students, so we can talk about our individual biographies. Yes, we are participating in certain organizations of higher education. Some of you work at the university, some of you are students, some of you are researchers in institutions doing research. These organizations all together exchange, meet at conferences, places like this, but also strong intervention of state. Yes, how we do science in Ukraine and Poland is very much dependent to the state-level policies. Yes, but of course we do not interact with state as such, but we, for example, interact with certain state agencies. And this all happens on the field level, which helps us understanding both individual processes, but also macro processes of the social change. Yeah, and what I do with my colleagues, we try to build the synthesis of the macro-level changes by synthesizing the many case studies of certain social fields in Poland. So far we have, these are just examples of very well studied fields in Poland. Higher education field. Yes, what are the changes of higher education and the research field, which is not only responding to demographic needs of our society, which is not only transforming from the communist design of higher education, but also wants to catch up with the changes on the global research scene. Migration policy, the field I was studying for quite a long time. Yes, how we are dealing with immigration from Poland, but also how we are dealing, attracting, and at the same point trying not to attract Ukrainian labor workers, for example. Environmental policies, this is extremely interesting field because some conflicts regarding the environment in Poland are lasting for 300 or even 400 years. Long durée perspective could be even applied in that case. Social work, non-governmental organizations, and so on. Yeah, but what's very interesting, we see very common, quite often very common processes. Yes, we can witness how we can see how the accession to European Union is changing different social fields. What are the common changes of power between actors relevant to these fields? So we can see the macro processes, but we can see also increased differences between them. Yes, because at least each of them has many of them has some typical for the given one, the certain field, history and embeddedness in certain fields that make them difference. But altogether, it helps us building the new synthesis, which is evidence-based, and it's not only speculative. Yeah, so I see in that research program a good idea how to perceive the, how to reinterpret the social transformation and the Europeanization, and how to phrase or express the hypothesis for understanding the new period of changes we are going to witness in the nearest future. Thank you very much for the attention.
Thank you.